Hi everyone, welcome to lesson number 17 on our persuasive writing unit, and today the whole purpose of the lesson will be to write your letter to change your world as a first draft. So your title, write a letter to change your world, and the objective, to craft a letter to truly persuade others to make our world better. And of course, when we're talking about making our world better, we're thinking specifically about global warming and the impact of climate change. Okay, so for your starter, as a British citizen, if you want to invoke change, who can you write to? So those of you that have watched the earlier videos will already know the answer to this, hopefully. Have a go at answering it now. Think about who you could contact if you want to make a change in terms of who you could write to within this country. All right, so answer starter now. Right, so having answered the starter, I'm sure you have come up with answers like your MP, and that would be exactly the direction that this lesson is going in. We're going to talk about how you could write a letter to your MP, and the hint is kind of in the assessment over here, so hopefully that starter is pretty blazingly obvious for you. Your assessment then, you're going to be writing to your MP expressing your views on climate change and what you think our government should do about it. When I say you're going to be writing to your MP, this is fictional. We're not actually going to do that unless you so wish. If you feel really inspired and want to send your letter off, you are free to do that. And you can find details of how you can contact your MP at .gov. So go search it up in Google and you can find out the address details for your local MP, and you are free to send that letter if you so wish. Remember, the whole purpose of this unit is not political. It's about learning the skills that you can use in the future should you ever need to express your viewpoint to government. And of course, that's what they're paid to do. Our MPs are employed to listen to the concerns of the people and then to act as our kind of mediator in government. They are able to go in and present our viewpoints and concerns so that it can be debated and the government can then make the best decisions about how to do the right thing for the people of this country. Okay, so this is a really important skill to be aware of and to develop for the future in case you ever feel the need to use it. So having looked at your assessment task, you've got 3 bullet point questions beneath it. So what is the genre? Who is the target audience? And what is the purpose? So we looked at these skills in a previous lesson, how to work out genre, target audience and purpose. I want you to now apply that to the task itself. When you get to GCSE, it's really crucial that you can identify from the task what genre they're asking you to write in, who they're asking you to aim it at, your target audience, and what the overall purpose of your writing should be. So have a go at answering those bullet points now. Okay, and pause the video there and complete those bullet point questions here. Right, so this is our local MP in Hampshire. So for our Basingstoke area, our MP is Maria Miller, and this is a little bit of information about her, just in case you weren't familiar. I'm sure many of you are already very familiar with Maria Miller and know a lot about her. In fact, I believe that she's been in school before, so you may well have actually seen her in the flesh and spoken to her. So this is what you need to know about her. So the UK public elects members of Parliament to represent their interests and concerns in the House of Commons. MPs consider and can propose new laws as well as raising issues that matter to you in the House. This includes asking government ministers questions about current issues, including those which affect local constituents. So Maria Miller will act on your behalf to share your concerns with whatever issues you feel are impacting you in your local area. And that's her role as a Member of Parliament. And we're going to imagine that we are writing a letter to her about the topic of climate change and asking her to do more to try to make it easier for us to protect our planet and to perhaps take on issues like recycling, or think of some other issues that you think she could take forward to government to propose how we can be more responsible in protecting our world. So that's the context for you. So when I asked you about your genre, your target audience and your purpose, your genre is clear, it's a letter. Your target audience is Maria Miller and members of Parliament. And your purpose is to try and increase the pressure on government to do more to tackle climate change. Okay? So when we're writing letters to prominent people like Maria Miller, the words you choose to use will be really important and powerful in the effect that they can have to persuade somebody to do what you're asking them to do. So your task now is going to be to create a list of vocabulary that you could use to assert an argument, i.e. I am promoting, okay? And you're going to write up a full sentence using the vocabulary you create. And I've given you like a model of some of the phrases that you might use either side of me here. I feel like an air hostess. So I am, or we need to, and you might argue, for example, protects or do more to tackle, and then follow it with the issues of climate change, the future of our world, etc. So I'm asking you to create, firstly, a list of vocabulary you could use to assert an argument, i.e. I am promoting. What other words could you use instead of promoting? Think about words like advocating, demanding, might be a little bit aggressive, but you can think of some other words in place of the word promoting. And then I'm going to ask you to write all of that up into a full sentence using some of the vocabulary that you created. One sentence talking about asserting an argument on climate change. So I feel passionately we need to protect the future of our world. That would be a model example for you. Okay, now go create firstly your list of vocabulary, thinking about other words for promoting, and then write up a sentence that embeds some of that vocabulary. Okay, and you'll need to pause the video here. Right, so having had a go at completing that last task where you were writing up a sentence to assert an argument, thinking about your vocabulary choices, I've now given you a list of some vocab that you can add here on the left, and I want you to now have a go at building in some of the added vocabulary to the sentence that you've already written. So you're going to be reworking your sentence using some of the vocabulary here, and I'd like you to aim to include maybe 2 or 3 of these other words, so you're extending your sentence outwards, but you're really thinking about your word choice to have that impact to persuade your MP to care about the issue of climate change and to do more. Okay, so you're looking for 2 or 3 of these that you like best to add onto your sentence that you've already written to really try and assert your argument that we need to do something more about climate change as a country. Okay, so we're now going to do a bit of reflection work on your plan so far. So last lesson we looked at planning it out, following the structure here. I'm now going to ask you to use this to plan out a draft letter. So you're going to need to use this plan. You're going to need to use the sentence structures that we've been building today, thinking about your vocab choices and how you can use your language to really try and persuade somebody potentially in Parliament to take on the issue of climate change further and to be impassioned by what you have written to make that change. And this is why English is awesome, is because your voice can matter. Even as a young person, if you can write convincingly and you can speak convincingly and you can argue a case, you can change your world, just as Greta is doing for all of young people around the world. She's using her voice to try and bring about a change that will benefit all of us. Okay, so we are going to be looking back at your plan. Go through it again, familiarise yourself with your line of argument and the phrases that you were building up, and maybe start by highlighting the ones that you definitely want to use in your letter, and you might want to cross out or use a second colour to highlight bits that you're definitely not going to use. Okay, so do that self-reflection work now. Okay, so for those of you that have maybe never written a formal letter before, I'm just going to talk you through the way that you need to structure it. For those of you that already know this and have already been taught fairly effectively how to structure a letter, feel free to skip this part of the video. But for everybody else, these are the basics that you will need to use in terms of the format and layout of your letter. Okay, so firstly, you are writing in the first person. You're using I am writing to you because. You're going to be addressing addressing Maria Miller as your MP, and you need to begin with a relatively informal greeting. So, you know, dear MP Maria Miller, for example, and you want to end it, because you're addressing somebody of relatively high status who you have probably never met before, you are going to sign it off with yours faithfully. Okay, obviously you can see here that the information is fictionalized. I'm clearly not Sherlock Holmes, but this is just a model for you the way that it would look on the page. You are going to be making sure that you have put the address in the top right, and you should also put the dates just below it there. Okay, so copy that format when you're writing yours. Okay, so in place of the editor and the Guardian, you're going to be replacing that with MP Maria Miller, the House of Commons. Okay, and you will then follow it with Dear Madam, if you wish, or Dear Maria Miller. Okay, then your first paragraph will fall below that, and you use a comma after you've addressed them there. So your first main paragraph below that, and you can see the kind of layout design here, signed off yours faithfully. And you can use the points on here, so you can pause the video and look at that in more detail, but you can use all of these points to help guide you in terms of what a good letter should look like and how it should be structured. Okay? Okay, I'm going to clarify for you, when it says begins with informal greeting, it doesn't mean that you should be using slang or kind of like really chatty colloquial language. You're not writing it as if you're talking to a friend. It means that you're not writing it as if you were writing up a formal essay. You are directly addressing that person and acknowledging that you're writing to a real human. This isn't like a piece of formal essay writing, okay? You've got to use that in more informal or personal kind of feel to your writing, using the direct address of you and using your name and details to kind of build that relationship between you as a writer and who you are addressing. Okay, that's really powerful. When you are writing a good letter, you want to build a relationship, you want to connect with your audience. So that's what I mean by that, rather than in terms of your language style, which you still need to be as ambitious as you can be and as sophisticated as you can be in your style. Okay, so we're going to read through like a model text for a letter on climate change. This is actually a letter that can be found online that some people are downloading and then completing and sending off with their own details to their local MPs. I do not suggest that you take ideas from this and just rewrite this. That is what we call plagiarism. You do not want to be stealing the content from this. You want to be writing it following the advice that I've given you over the last series of lessons. And the reason for that is because it will be better. And you'll see what I mean as we read through this now. What you can take from this is any key facts, statistics or information that you think would support your point. And it will give you a feel for the kind of informal approach of connecting with an audience whilst using sophisticated vocabulary and phrasing that I want you to try and mimic in your own writing. So you would have your address and date on the top right there. Then you're going to address your MP here with their full name. And you could start something like this, though you will do yours better if you follow the advice I've given. I am writing to express my concern about the imminent threat climate change poses to our country, to our people, and the future of our children. An overwhelming number of scientists agree that science about that climate change is occurring much faster than were initially predicted. We have only a few critical years before the changes become irreversible. More than 2,000 scientists contributing to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, have made it clear that cuts of at least 50% to 70% in global greenhouse gas emissions are necessary to allow our climate to restabilise. Therefore, the government should be making every effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions now. Specifically, I believe you should act to address the issues below, and I ask you to provide me with information on what the government is doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the following areas: reducing carbon dioxide emissions from coal-fired power plants, reducing emissions from the transport sector, funding initiatives for alternative and renewable energy technology, incentives for the uptake of renewable energy, removal of subsidies for fossil-based fuel sources. Now, these are kind of key points that you may wish to take and develop in your own writing. Particularly, just before your conclusion, you might want to suggest your new way forward as one of your 5 actions, and take some of these as potential new ways forward for the government to take action to improve the outcomes for our planet. So, to secure a future for our nation and our children, now is the time to set a new and positive direction for our national energy policy. We need policies that will lead our nation away from fossil-based fuels. Our addiction to fossil fuel harms human health, causes global warming, degrades land and marine ecosystems, and pollutes the earth. We need energy systems that provide clean, renewable, and reliable energy that does not threaten human health or the environment. We do create our futures, and not to reach for it would be a gross abdication of our moral responsibility. And I think this is quite a nice example here of your use of like that pathos, that emotive appeal, because what they're saying with a gross abdication of our moral responsibility means that we're stepping down from doing what's morally right. Okay, and they're using extreme exaggerative language to get that emotional reaction of disgust across, that it's disgusting for us not to do more to try and protect the world that we inhabit. Okay, I understand that focusing on climate change is just one of many issues during these challenging times. However, we cannot wait until tomorrow. We must take strong action now to address the daunting issues that climate change poses. Yours faithfully, and then your name. Okay, so there are lots of tips here that you could take forward in your own writing, and I've dropped a link to this in the description to help you out as well, and you can use any of the facts or points that are raised in this, but please do not copy whole sentences, whole paragraphs, or the whole structure of the piece, because that would be deemed plagiarism. You are stealing somebody else's ideas and work rather than thinking for yourself and creating your own. And to be perfectly honest, I think you can do better. I certainly know how capable my class are, and I know that your skills have been so well developed across this year that I'm utterly convinced that what you produce will be every bit as good, if not better, than this model essay here. Okay, and you want to take the points from this but put it into that letter format. So as I've suggested here, you want your address at the top right and the date, and then the address literally addressing Maria Miller as your MP on the left, dear Maria Miller MP. I am writing to, and then go on to make your own argument about climate change and what you think the government could actually do to make it better. For example, do you think that this letter format is right, that we need to set more targets to reduce carbon dioxide emissions? Do we need to do more to enable people to have and be able to finance eco cars, for example? Is that something that you think we need to be doing? Do we need to be installing the electric charging meters across the nation so that people can have electric cars that do less damage to our environment? Do you think we need more recycling available? Does it need to be collected more regularly? Think yourselves about some of the ways that we could actually improve our emissions and reduce the damage that we are doing to our planet. You can research all of that as well. There are lots of resources out there on how we could actually be doing things better and more greenly. So go research it and use those points in your letter. Okay, so having looked at an example of how you could write a letter and some of the points that you could raise within the letter, I'm now going to show you some vocabulary that you could use to build in a more persuasive argument. So people that I have taught before, you will be really familiar with these. We use this kind of slide quite a lot in class, and this is where I give you your key ingredients that I want you to try and include. So that's like your fire actions methods, your address of the MP. These are things you need to try and tick off as included in your letter. And then on the left here, I give you some vocabulary to help you know how to sound sophisticated and impressive and persuasive. So just to run through for you some of the meanings of the words. So if you were to use the verb repudiate, it means to reject. You've got obviously the word protect, like to protect the climate. Argue, advocate and promote are all words I want to see you trying to build in there. So I'm here to argue. I'm here to advocate. I want you to promote. You want to be using verbs like these in your writing to try and direct your MP about how you want them to react. You may also include some of these adverbs, such as vehemently, meaning strongly, actively, as in, I actively want you to take this further in Parliament. You're suggesting that this isn't something that you just want them to read and dismiss, you want them to actively campaign for. Politely, I politely remind you of the urgency of this topic, and desperately, we desperately need to act now before it's too late. Adjectives like inhumane, meaning it is beyond human, it's disgusting in terms of our moral behaviour if we fail to act on it. Countless and defenceless. You might talk about countless ecosystems being damaged and defenceless animals being left homeless if we fail to act. Okay, and on this side here, I just remind you about your technical accuracy. When you're writing this, you need to make sure that you are punctuating accurately and using like a variety of punctuation, as I've put down here, a range of punctuation, including these. As I've said earlier, go look these up if you're not sure, do your own independent research. I will look at that in a future lesson, but you can be independent and do some research into that now. And try and work in a very short sentence for impact. It's our responsibility to act now. So short, sharp, to the point, to really hammer the persuasive point that you've got to make. So your job now, having worked through the tasks in this lesson and looked at what a letter could sound like and what it should look like in terms of format, it's going to be now to write your draft version of the letter. So you can use this to guide you with vocabulary and the techniques you need to embed. And you can use this, if I can go back to it, yeah, over here, your planning document that you've used to talk through some of the phrases that you could embed and use in your writing. So you now want to have all of those in front of you, but you're going to start now writing out the actual text of your letter, and you need to format it so that it looks like this. So you want to have, you don't have to use your real address if you don't want to. You can just you can use the school address, so look that up online. You can put the school address in there instead of your personal address and put the date in, and then you're addressing it to our MP Maria Miller, and you're writing the text to format it like this, signing off yours faithfully. Okay, so let's go back to this. So you are now going to use this, and you'll need to pause the video here. So this is on the screen to help you, and you're going to write your draft version of the letter using all of the work that you have planned so far. You need to go back over your written answers, look for phrases that you think, that was really persuasive. I really like that phrase that I planned out there, or I really like my use of that particular method in that phrase. And you want to take all of those great examples of your work from earlier and put them into the letter so that you prove that you can write persuasively. Okay, so that's your job now for the rest of this lesson. Write up your draft version and feel free to drop examples of your planning and your rough drafts to your teachers or to me, and we will happily read it and give you some feedback on how you're doing. I'm sure these are going to be fabulous. So you should spend the rest of this lesson planning it out. Next lesson you'll have a bit more planning time, and then we're going to look at some of the punctuation methods that you can embed and use to get a more impressive, sophisticated style of written expression. Okay, great work everyone. Have fun doing this. Be as persuasive as you can be. Can't wait to read them. Bye.